3, 2, 1.
Here we go!
Welcome to ASD Market Week's YouTube series, Retail Revelations Inside the Deal. This is your all-access pass to the world of buying and selling in the retail space. We're getting candid and having real conversations on what it takes to get the deal done. This is Retail Revelations Inside the Deal. Hello and welcome to Retail Revelations Inside the Deal. I'm your host, Stephanie Beringhele, and joining us today we have a real treat, somebody who's very well known in the industry, who also serves a large portion of the community. Please welcome John Nadeau from Goodwill International, the Southwest Florida division. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's always nice seeing you and spending time with you. Appreciate it.
Well, I'm excited for two reasons. One, you already know I'm a huge fan of Goodwill, but two, I never realized until I last saw you all the good you actually do for the community. So we're going to go and peel back layers and layers to see how the organization is structured and a little bit about you. But let's go into, John, give us a brief description about who you are and how you landed at Goodwill.
Well, it's an interesting story. So most of my experience was with Fred Meyer in the Pacific Northwest. And for those that aren't familiar with Fred Meyer, it's kind of like Walmart before there was a Walmart. It's a one-stop shopping center. It's a big company now owned by Kroger. And I spent 23 years there in retail. At the end, I was in charge of the Western Washington and Alaska divisions for the food group. That was very good training. Fred Meyer spawned and a lot of presidents and CEOs across other companies in the United States. So it was a great place for me to learn the trade. From there, for some reason, I decided to buy a supermarket and try to be an entrepreneur. So went and did that for a while. I owned a franchising business where I did Chinese restaurants and sushi bars at the same time I did the supermarket. I opened up an international trade company at one point, did a lot of business in China, and probably you're too young, but if some people that hear this will remember the big craze when scooters were really popular, the little two-wheel Razor scooters and the electric scooters. And I imported tens of thousands of those. It was real busy for a while, but that, had its window and then kind of waned. And I had somebody working for me that was looking for a job, and I came across director of retail at Goodwill of Tacoma, Washington. And I got all the information together that I was going to give it to her. Then the more I read it, the more I liked it and thought this might be interesting. And so I went and talked to them, ended up leaving all the other stuff behind, went to work for Goodwill. That was almost 20 years ago. And about 10 years ago, I made it down here to Fort Myers, and 5 years ago was honored to be appointed the CEO president of this organization. So it's an interesting journey. If someone would have told me 25 years ago I'd be working in Goodwill in Fort Myers, Florida, when I was up in Tacoma running a restaurant, probably would not have happened. So interesting journey of mine, for sure.
Be honest, you just wanted to see some sun. You're like, Florida, yes, sign me up.
Well, it's funny because when I first came down here, all my friends and family are still back on the West Coast, and I told them that I'm going to go down there and work for a few years, retire, and come back. And after being down here about 6 months, I said, nah, I'm never coming back. I love the sun. I'm a golfer, so this is a great place for me to be.
Well, it's so interesting because I don't think I ever realized the extent of your previous experience in entrepreneurship and in retail, but it totally makes sense to me. So I'm going to regress a little bit. You invited myself, my boss, Camille, and a bunch of other Goodwill peeps to come actually and do a boot camp that was really focused on seasonal items and new goods. And I thought it was so interesting because the transparency that your group has is unparalleled. And it's so good to see what products can be incorporated in a primarily donated concept store that gives you an advantage by filling in certain gaps. So why did you host it, and why was it so important for you to work with other Goodwill groups?
Been doing it for a number of years. Goodwill International, which is kind of our parent company, used to have a person whose full-time job was to kind of help agencies with new goods, with Halloween, with things like that. And about 5 years ago, they eliminated that position. And I'd been working with that individual for a number of years and building the program and building vendor relationships and best practices and things. And I didn't want to see that all go away. So I just kind of stepped into the breach, grabbed a couple other buyers that I knew from other markets, Seattle, Tacoma, Menasha, Wisconsin, and we kind of formed what we call the advisory group, just so as we can be a resource for other Goodwills, because we're not in competition, we're in collaboration. And I want all the Goodwills to do well. And I think this topic of new goods, Halloween presentations, the things that differentiate us from other thrift stores, it's really important to us now, but it's going to be even more important in the future. And so I just want to do everything I can do to help anybody share what information I have, share best practices amongst the groups, and that's kind of the direction we've gone. So it's kind of a non-paid, unofficial title I have, but I'm more than happy to do it.
Well, your team did an incredible job, and what I appreciated most was it was a hybrid concept of teaching the group, where we had the conference portion. There were exhibitors that people could go and check out, but more importantly, you let us go into your establishments and actually see everyone in action. So I kind of want to dig into you've created a boutique. You've created kind of the standard store, but you've also incorporated the community portion to remind shoppers that the whole purpose of the organization is to help the community. So kind of run into the different divisions you have and how you've curated it and why it's so important.
Well, the basic thing to start off with is that Goodwill does not exist to operate thrift stores. And I think that's how most people think of us and how most people react with us and interact with us. The purpose of Goodwill is to help people with disabilities and disadvantages either find jobs or acclimate back in the community. And we use the stores as a means to fund that. So what you're talking about in terms of the cohabitation is that 7 of my stores, I have 28 stores, 7 of them have what we call a community resource center, where people can come in and take advantage of a myriad of our programs. We do everything from ESL to computer skills training. We have a school for people with intellectual disabilities. We have a small business startup program where we've actually started more than 1,000 businesses in Southwest Florida, of which 600 of them are still operating. So we do a lot of things in the community. We use the stores as the driver, but by having the community resources in some of the stores, it really ties, psychologically, the customer, the mission to the stores. And so people can support the mission by either donating to us or shopping with us, and they can have a big part in our success, because we don't really get a lot of federal or state funding. We generally fund everything through our store enterprise. So I have a philosophy, if you want to talk about our stores in particular. When I first came down here, I said, I don't operate thrift stores. I operate retail stores.
That's right.
And our stores are going to look every bit as good or better than Marshall's or Ross or anybody else. We're going to look a lot better than thrift stores. And so we run, the term we use is fashion forward Goodwill stores. And you've been in them, you saw what they look like. I think you would agree that they're not like going into your grandfather's thrift store.
They were so good. And I came out with some goodies I did buy.
I remember that. And then, we've added to that next a couple of boutique stores where we curate the really high-end name brands, really unique wares items. And we have 2 of those. They're smaller footprint stores, but they're both very successful. And you literally would think you're walking into a mall fashion retailer when you walk into one of those stores. And then recently I've added a cafe, a coffee shop next to one of my boutiques. We brand the boutiques. We don't use the name Goodwill on them. We use the name Blue. And so the cafe is Cafe Blue. So we're trying to build that brand awareness. We don't hide from the fact that we're Goodwill, but we want to differentiate that boutique store from our regular inline stores. But again, I'm real proud of the store platforms we have here. I think that's the way the future of all Goodwills is going to need to be, because the competition is so fierce that we can no longer get away with running thrift stores. And so that's just kind of the way I've built the agency here.
you've made it, you and your team, you've made it into an experience. And that cafe had the almonds with the sugar in it and everything. And then there's a little bit of wine and there was music. But
Mhm.
before that, we went shopping into the boutique division and you had the beautiful wall with paintings on it, and talk about the different senses. And I think that consumers, that's why today, present day, so many people are saying, you know, it used to be taboo to shop in a thrift store, but now it's not. And guess what? They do have new incorporated with donated goods. We are helping the environment. And most important, you nailed it, we're helping our community. So people that might not get help elsewhere, we're helping being a part of the reason that they get to that support that maybe the government's unable to fulfill for them.
Yeah, we're real fortunate in this market too, in that Naples is part of our territory, and Naples is kind of the Beverly Hills of Florida, and so we get tremendous donations. Sometimes purposeful, sometimes not purposeful. Um, and you mentioned art. We get pieces of art that I've had a piece of art that's been worth $25,000.
Ah,
We get a lot that are worth in the hundreds of dollars, and so we'll curate those out. At our boutique store, you saw the wall. What we'll actually do is we'll figure out what the prevailing retail for that piece of art would be by doing research. We have a couple people that are really knowledgeable on art, and then we'll sell it for half of that. So if we have a piece of art, a signed piece of art that would normally sell for $800, say on an auction site, we'll sell for $400 because we want to also always have that value portion of shopping at a Goodwill or shopping at Blue. Uh, I'm very bullish on what I call the value proposition. And that goes in the way I merchandise new goods. It goes in the way that we price things. We want to have our niche is the best place to shop to get the most value every time you walk in.
well, you're doing a great job. And I want to go into the new product line because you definitely have specific categories that perform for you within this specific region. So tell us some items that you feel are advantageous having them into your store, having it as a new product
Well, let
for
me
this
break
price point.
what we call new goods into two separate areas. One I call programs. And so programs would be something that we have every day of the year. It's an ongoing item. Coke products, candy, um, men's belts, women's belts, sunglasses and readers, things that we keep in a warehouse and fulfill back into the stores. That's about 65 to 70% of our business, maybe 75% of our business now. And then we also do closeouts on top of that. And that's where we go to ASD primarily, which is the most important show for me. And we find things that maybe a representative only has 80 of them left, or he might have 500 of them left. I like to buy them all, and then bring them in and sell them and get out. And the reason I like closeouts is because the shoppers see something different every time they come into the store, and it really matches kind of the paradigm of Goodwill, and something that I remind people of, and even people that shop with us don't think of this very often. We have a certain time limit we'll allow things to be on the shelf. In our case, it's 3 weeks. So if I price something and put it on the rack, a piece of clothing, after 3 weeks, I take it to 50% off. Then after it's 50% off for 2 days, I sell it at $1.99. So if you shop in my store on March 1st and you come back in on April 5th, there will be nothing in that store in the donated side that you saw on March 1st. An entirely new store every 4 weeks, rotating through on a weekly basis. And so that's one of the great allures of Goodwill, is that it's not, if you go to Macy's, you're seeing the same stuff pretty much all the time every time you go in there. Every time you come into Goodwill, and if you're shopping for women's apparel, you're looking at new stuff every day. We do about 30,000 garments a day in our production facility that go out
Whew.
into our 28 stores, 5 days a week, and that's a constant churn on the inventory. So uh, what happens with that, of course, is that we have a lot of repeat customers, and we sell a lot of things the first day they go out, because if we have a Tommy Bahama shirt that we put a good price on, that's not going to sit on the rack very long. People are going to find that and they're going to buy it. So I kind of apply that to my new goods. I have the things that I have every day, the impulse items, the Cokes, the Pepsis, things like that. But then I like those closeouts because then if you come back a month later, that item is gone, but something new has taken its place. And so I use ASD. I have vendors for most of my program stuff that also are at ASD, but I use ASD a lot to buy my closeout items. And there's certain vendors that I work with that specialize in that. They kind of know what I like, and so we have a good rapport built up over 20 years of buying, and that's how I integrate new goods into our program. I try never to compete with donated goods, and so if you think about, you would not buy, at least I would hope you would not buy, knowing you, a pair of donated socks, right?
Oh,
But I buy new socks at ASD and sell them. So they accompany the donated good, but they don't compete with it. So I don't buy a lot of women's blouses, for example, in new goods, but I do buy socks, undergarments, foundation garments. We do a tremendous business in belts because I can sell a real leather belt for $19.99 or a full leather belt for $9.99 that you would see from $29 to $79 in a regular retail store, and they're every bit as good. So again, going back to my philosophy of value proposition, I also use new goods for what I call shock and awe. Our sunglasses are the same basic quality of sunglasses you'll find at Walgreens or at Rite Aid for $26.99, $29.99. Same with our readers. We sell them for $6.99 every day. Now, I could get $9.99 for them very easily. Some Goodwills do, but I love the fact that people can't believe they're getting them for $6.99. That makes a price impression, and when they see that in the front of my store, that price impression carries out throughout the whole rest of the store, and that's what I like to use new goods. So it's primarily a profit generator for me. Of course, it's about 12% of my business, but I use them also to create a price image that differentiates us from other stores. So there's a lot to new goods. There's a lot to understanding and building those relationships and understanding what sells. When I came from Tacoma, Washington to Fort Myers, Florida, I had to unlearn some things. The dark mahogany wood furniture that was just a great thing in Tacoma, can't give it away here. So I had to kind of readjust myself to this market and this clientele. And then even within my 5-county area, the things that sell well in Naples might not sell as well in the farming community of Clewiston. So I have to be cognizant on a store-by-store basis in terms of the mix of goods I put in the store. So I'm thinking about that when I'm walking the floor at ASD with my buyers. We're looking for things not only maybe for all 28 stores, but maybe a subset of those stores based on the demographics.
it's such a great formula because I think that's what a lot of retailers are having issues with right now is the frequency of that consumer coming to their store. And you've created that treasure hunt where, okay, I want to go because I know I'm always going to see something different. And then you have tried and true product that fits that core gap where, okay, I need the readers. I can't find my readers, right? How
Mhm.
simple is that? But
Yep,
here they
yep.
are on a display, and it's a very nice display. It's right near the checkout. So it's almost a no-brainer. And I bet you that allows that basket size to just expand a lot, which is great because it's organic.
Any retailer will tell you the easiest customer to get is the one you already have. Just get more from them. And when I came down here, we call them the gauntlets, this area of merchandising impulse items by the check stands. And I remember the CEO that was here at the time, he was kind of not buying what I was selling. And so I put the first one in and I said, here's the challenge. I said, you and I are going to go down there when I open it up the first day, and we're going to stand off to the side and you watch what happens. And I said, not one person is going to put a blouse back because they're going to pick up a Coke and a candy bar. That Coke and the candy bar are now additional sales. And
Yep.
so my average transaction size in the last 7 years has gone up $9.
Oh,
And most of that is because we're getting that incremental sale of these impulse items or the $99 closeout fan system that I got at ASD or something like that. That has helped me get above just that donated apparel, which is really the lifeblood of a Goodwill. Is donated women's apparel. It's the number one category. To get those extra dollars into the shopping cart, you need to have these other items. And so new goods, I want as much of that 12% of new goods that I'm doing to be incremental, not to be in competition. And I think that's kind of the way we try to merchandise the stores.
Well, like I said, very successful, great strategy, and you implement it very well. Your stores are beautiful and very well merchandised with friendly staff. So kudos to all of you. I want to go back because you mentioned it multiple times. You have a large group that comes to ASD, and it's not just your affiliate group, it's others. And a lot of time we have exhibitors that say, "Oh, we'd love to do business with Goodwill. How do we start? What's the best way?" So, what are your recommendations, especially for first timers that are coming to the show and exhibiting, for them to approach the Goodwill group and introduce product that you think might fit within your particular stores?
Yeah, that's a tough question because I kind of look at it from the other side because we have constantly have new buyers because there's a certain amount of churn and burn turnover at Goodwill. There's agencies that are in and out of new goods, so I always have new buyers coming to the show. I try to work with them. Our advisory group is available to help buyers walk the sales floor at ASD, introduce them to the vendors that we know. Um, One of the things that's really important to me, if you're a vendor that wants to work with Goodwill, is that you will give the same price to the smallest Goodwill that you would give to John Nadeau, because I'm also not only looking out for Fort Myers, I'm looking out for the entire Goodwill movement. And that's something we've worked on really hard for 20 years because it didn't used to be that way. There used to be a lot of negotiating on the sales floor, and some of the Goodwill buyers aren't quite as good at negotiating freight terms and things like that. So if I was a vendor, that's one of the things I would know going in is that I need to treat all the Goodwills the same, no matter the size of the order. Because we have Goodwills that will come to ASD that might have 8 stores or 10 stores, and we have some that have 150 stores and everything in between. So I guess that would be one tip would be treat us all the same. You got to get your foot in the door. Landing that first Goodwill is the most important thing because then word spreads. And I'm constantly talking to other Goodwills about what new vendors have you found lately. Usually when I come to ASD, actually, Stephanie, my buyers go do most of the buying. I like to just walk around and meet new vendors and
Yeah.
people I haven't done business with. And what do you got? And what would where are you shipping from? And try to learn all those things. And so, if you see me in the show, grab me and bring me over and tell me what you got. But I think, making sure your programs are across all Goodwills the same. And then, you got to land that first Goodwill. That's really important.
I love that you protect your community. Community first. It's not just about the Fort Myers, it's for everybody. And I think that's great advice. You need to make sure that whatever you put out in the atmosphere, it's fairly distributed. Otherwise, you might tarnish a relationship that could be quite amazing for the future of your company. So,
Yeah.
great advice. I wanted to go into there's always challenges within the retail space and the economy and everything like that. And you're a leader. Your CEO title is quite hefty, and a lot of people probably depend on you. So, how do you approach challenges, and how do you guide through a leadership mentality?
Wow. Well, there's a couple huge challenges for us. One, of course, is that our historical demographic has been over 48, and so as the baby boomer generation kind of moves through, um, we're trying to be an appeal to the younger demographic so we can maintain our business long term. Um, about the Macklemore song a few years ago, that was actually done in Seattle when I was up in Tacoma. We knew about Macklemore, and we got a little bit of bump off of that with the younger shopper, but that kind of waned after time. And I think we're kind of back into our old demographic. So a big challenge for us is figuring out how to appeal better to the next generations coming up so we don't time ourselves out. And a lot of retailers run into that, and that's why people like Sears no longer exist, and
Yeah.
Kmart and stuff. They had a great formula that worked, but they didn't and weren't willing to change with the times. So we have that challenge. Another challenge that we face is the lifeblood of Goodwill is our donation stream. Because if it's not donated to me, I can't turn around and resell it, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't that many years ago that there weren't any of these platforms on the internet to resell goods like there are now with, Poshmark and ThreadUp and all these people. And my own daughters, I have to scold them from time to time because they're telling me how great a deal they got. And I said, wait a second, that should have been donated to Goodwill. And 15 years ago, we would have got all those things. Now we're not getting as many. And so I have concerns, and I think the longevity of our business model relying on donations, we have to really pay attention to that and make sure that we have alternate ways of acquiring donations, either through partnerships with other nonprofits or working with large corporations and things like that. But then an additional challenge to that is people like Walmart want to get into our space, and they're nibbling at bringing back donated items and reselling them in some kind of a way and fashion. And so there's a lot of people coming after us after this thrift business. So we have those challenges. We also have the challenges of just the changing way people shop, and the fact that I myself, if I run out of an ink cartridge for my printer at home, instead of getting the car to run to Home Depot, I'll just get on Amazon. It'll be at my door the next morning, right? And so brick and mortar is being challenged right now, not just at Goodwill, but across other retail platforms. And you're seeing a consolidation of retail, great companies like Big Lots that are struggling, that are kind of in our kind of, they're in the closeout business. So we share some commonality there. So when I see that happen, that concerns me. So we have those kind of retail centric challenges, but the biggest challenge for me right now, and I think for many agencies across the country and many other businesses, is uncontrollable labor cost. When I got to Fort Myers in 2015, our minimum starting wage was $8.60, and now it's $13. And we're through a vote that was taken at state level, our minimum wage increases $1 every year. And every time it goes up $1, it costs me $2 million. And so I'm always $2 million in the hole when I'm going to budget next year before I even start thinking about increasing my sales or doing any other efficiencies that I might do. So now we've had a lot of hurricanes down here. You've had fires in California. So what's going to happen there is insurance costs are going to skyrocket, and mine have been. I had Ian, back in 20, and then we had last year 2 hurricanes come through. So the cost of insurance for our agency has increased by 7 figures in the time I've been a CEO. And when you're selling a woman's blouse for $4.99, you got to sell an awful lot of those to make up for the fact that your insurance just went up $500,000 and there's nothing you can do about it. So these runaway costs that we can't control right now are the biggest challenge I face on my desk every day. But I also worry about those environmental challenges from competition, from changing demographics and all those things. So we have a myriad of challenges. Not complaining, it's just, and that's why I sit in this chair, is to figure out a way to get around all that stuff. But anybody that's listening to it that's a retailer or another Goodwill fully appreciates what I'm saying about those challenges.
And it's awareness. It's noting that these are conflicts or concerns now that can have a heavy effect on the future, that it's a good thing that you've got a pulse on it to say, how do we mitigate? What can we do to be creative with it to kind of help propel you into the future space? So I don't think you're alone in that. And I think that even just in 2025, it's going to be interesting to see where everything goes and where it takes us. There's talks about tariffs. There's all these unknown factors where you can only control what you can. But the first start is you have to be aware. So that's a good portion.
You have to be nimble, and these are lessons that you learn over time. And I learned the hard way, just like anybody else, but you can never be too much in love with your program and your paradigm. You have to always be thinking about, if X, then Y, and thinking long-term and think strategically. And even in the short time I've been CEO here, we've changed the mix of goods in our stores a couple times because the donation stream is changing. And if you think about, if you went to a Goodwill 20, 25 years ago, a big thing was the kitchen appliance aisle and toasters and things like that, coffee makers. Well, those now are made to work and then break. And people just replace them. The price is down on them. TVs, we used to sell a lot of TVs in our stores, not so much anymore because when they stop working, they're not fixed anymore. They're just thrown away. So the store of today looks a lot different than the store even 10 years ago. And I know the store 10 years from now is going to look different, but I want to be thinking about that now, not trying to react to it 10 years from now when it's too late, right? So in leadership, we have to be really looking down the road and trying to anticipate what those challenges are going to be and get in front of them.
Great advice. And there's no wonder, and I'm going to read it from my paper because I think it's really important, and you're so modest, but I'm going to highlight it. There is the Community Foundation that's in Southwest Florida, and they announced their top 30 influential CEOs, and you made the list. So first of all, congratulations. And secondly, how do you think you got that? Like, you have to give yourself some props. So what did you do that you think people noticed, and how can we expect more of that from leaders in the future?
Well, when I got that award, the first thing I did was make sure everybody understands. I consider that a Goodwill of Southwest Florida award. It's not a John Nadeau award because it reflects how they perceive our agency and the good works we do, and that's my team. And you could be the greatest conductor in the world, but if your musicians are lousy, you're not going to make good sound, right? And so I have had the pleasure and just been very fortunate to put together a great team here that are experts in all of their fields, and together, we can make things happen. So, I appreciate the award and everything. It's nice, but it really is an award for my team. So I'll take it in that regard. But leadership is, especially at Goodwill, is really important, and I think continuity of leadership is always important too. Because what happens at Goodwill, for example, is when the CEO changes, the next CEO that comes in might not believe in new goods at all, and might completely get away from the program, and that creates a lot of disruption. It creates a lot of turmoil, and you lose a lot of momentum that you built up. So one of the things I've worked on here, which I think is an important aspect of what I do, is having that succession plan in place all through all the senior leadership, and especially at the CEO level, and so that any one piece goes away for whatever reason, we have backup, we have the ability to go forward. The quote that I always like to use, Alexander Hamilton in the Federalist Papers was talking about what the president needs to have to be successful. And he said the energy in the executive is the most important thing. And so my definition of energy is that, and it's a really hard thing to do. You do it very well. You got to be I'm on stage all the time. When I'm here, and it's not because I'm John Nadeau, it's because I'm the CEO. It's my title. When I walk through the warehouse, people are looking at me. People are interacting with me. I can't have a bad day. And so I work really hard to, whether I'm having a good day or a bad day, I'm the same guy when I'm here. I try to be in early and stay late. I want to set the tone that I have the energy. I want to be positive. One of my sayings is, and people laugh when they hear this, but it's really true for me. And I've said this throughout my whole career. If every job here paid the same, if every job here paid $20 an hour, I'd still want to be the guy in charge, because that's the kind of energy I want to bring to this thing. So, yeah, the award is great. But really, when it comes down to it, it's hard work, it's perseverance, it's vision, but it's mostly putting together a great team and letting them do what needs to be done.
Well said. I often say that we're a reflection of the market, but I also think that teams are a reflection of their leadership. And by keeping awareness of people have eyes on me and it does matter, and I can keep that energy up and going and excited, and I can get the buy-in of saying, this is good for business, this is good for you. It's very important. And you can see when companies don't have the right leadership, because you look at the team and their faces are just, they're sad or they're down. So I didn't see any of that with your team. They were very happy and very helpful. So,
well, one of the things we try to do, and I think it's also important, you need to share with the team what's going on and share the successes. And I actually send out an email every morning with the previous day's sales and have commentary about it. And it's always, I try to be positive. All that information is readily available to everybody. They don't need me to do it, but I do it because I want them to know that I'm looking at it every day. I do it on Saturday and Sunday too. I want them to know what's important to me, the things I'm looking at, and I share those successes. And so that even down to a donation attendant or a clerk in the store, they feel like they have a piece of this thing. And, I'm trying to build a new campus here now. So I keep everybody informed of what the status is of that. And so that, we have 1,200 employees here in my, 5-county area, my agency. And 75% of those employees have a disability or disadvantage. And so, I have a tremendous responsibility, much more so than when I worked at Fred Meyer, when I worked for a large company. I was working for shareholder wealth. I was working for my bonus. I was working for all these things. Here, I'm working for those 1,200 people. I really believe that. So I bring that to this job. And I think that's one thing that if I'm going to give myself credit for doing anything that I do well, is I keep in mind our focus here is our 1,200 employees and then all the people we serve in the community. The retail stuff is easy for me. I mean, I don't want to make it sound like I'm cocky, but that's the easy part. And that's kind of the fun part, but it's not what's important at Goodwill. What's important at Goodwill is the people. And I think if you portray that, if you live it, people understand it, and then they'll follow your leadership because they know that you have their best interest at heart.
So true. And that kind of pressure, I'm sure, lingers every day. And that's probably why you look at numbers and you do the positive commentary, because you want to make sure that whatever you're communicating is effective, but also in line with making sure people feel good. So huge responsibility, which leads me to, what are your hopes and dreams for Goodwill? You've worked so hard, you've serviced, you've supported so many people. So at the end of the day, when you say, I did a good job and my dream came true, or what my hopes came true, what does that look like?
Well, I'll break that into a couple different areas. I would say in terms of the business aspect and this whole thing with new goods, and I'm hoping that I was the bridge between the services that Goodwill International used to provide and how those services are provided in the future in terms of sharing best practices and organizing these trips to ASD and things like that. I can't do it forever, so I have to figure out before I leave how we're going to transition that. But I take pride in the fact that I did step into that role and just kind of made it happen. And so, before I leave, I want to make sure that's taken care of. That's got in good hands and it's going forward. We don't lose all the continuity. As far as this agency goes, it's an interesting thing because I'm kind of known as a retail guy, and I'm kind of, because of the stores here and things like that. But that's not what I want to be known for. I want to be known for our mission services, and we provide services to over 25,000 people a year. Some very important, some very deep services for people with intellectual disabilities. I take great pride in that. So I want to make sure that I leave behind all of that in very good shape with a sustainable future. We're working, I think I shared with you, on a new campus project where I can bring all of my activities under one roof, which we're not now. We're all over the place, and we're leasing warehouse space, and we're doing a lot of things that are inefficient. I want to get it all under one roof. Part of that project also includes 2 apartment complexes, half of which will be for people with disabilities, which is a very underserved population in this area. A new Pathways to Opportunity School for our participants that have timed out of the school districts and don't have the life skills to live on their own. So we teach that here. So I'm working real hard to get that campus done. And then not only that, but then have the business be healthy, the stores be doing well enough so I know that when I do leave, it'll sustain itself going forward. So, I got a lot to do. Even at my advanced age, I just signed a new 5-year contract with my board because I figure that's what it's going to take me to get all of my personal goals accomplished here. So it's a lot to do, but when you're working for something, there's nothing wrong with working for a for-profit company, don't get me wrong, but when you're really working for the kinds of things that Goodwill stands for, it's I love coming to work every day. and I feel like the luckiest guy in the world.
I'm going to end with, we are heading to Las Vegas this March. We've got a very large group of Goodwill that's going to be coming. John will be hosting and walking through booths, and he's got a meeting room. So my last question to you is, what do you love about ASD, and what are you most excited to do this March?
Oh, wow. What do I love most? Well, I have so many friends at ASD now because I've been doing this in this role at Goodwill for 20 years. I mean, not as a CEO, but as a buyer. And I've always been in charge of the new goods. So I've been doing that for 20 years. So I have long-term relationships with many of the vendors at ASD. And so for me coming back, it's like going back to a high school reunion every year, twice a year. Coming to Las Vegas isn't bad either. But so there's that. There's a social and camaraderie aspect of it for me, because I do have buyers that actually go out and do the buying. So maintaining old friendships. But then again, like I said before, I love just walking the show without having an agenda and just seeing what's new, because there's stuff changing all the time. And that's the great thing about ASD. And then with the closeout vendors, every show I'll find something that I'll bring back. And if I find something really good, I'll get on the phone and call 7 or 8 other buyers and get them to come by that booth and see what I'm seeing. But yeah, it is like going home for me twice a year. And so if you've been to my boot camp, I tell everybody, if you're going to go to any show, it has to be ASD. All the rest of them are fine, but you need to go to ASD twice a year if you're going to have a vibrant new goods program in the Goodwill world. So I appreciate ASD. You guys have worked really well with Goodwill. I think you understand the buying power of 80 to 100 Goodwill agencies coming and what we can do. So I think it's a great partnership we've created over the years, and I really value that partnership. And I really value our friendship. And you've helped many Goodwills with housing and getting hotel rooms and things like that. So it's a good partnership.
It's a great community. We're very grateful to have you and your group. I always say home is where the heart is, and we've got a good crew. So we're excited to have you. And I think that the only final thoughts that I would say is, it's so easy to donate. It's so easy to volunteer. Goodwill is doing very amazing stuff for people that need it the most. So I encourage everyone to check out their local chapter, see how they can participate. I'm always contributing. I've got growing kids, so we have stuff that they never even get to wear because they're growing. But it's as simple as just saying, what can I do to help, and being a participant and shop. You can shop and have a good time and support the cause. So
Yep.
John, thank you so much for joining us. We will see you in March, but definitely appreciate you coming by.
Looking forward to seeing you and having an in and out trip. So let's make sure we get that on the list.
Thank you for joining us. We want you to be a part of the show. So let us know who you want to see and what stories you want to hear. Leave us a comment and make sure you like and subscribe.